What's up guys, Nelson Dellis here, very casual video today. We're gonna talk about chess again. If you haven't seen my last chess video, make sure to check it out. In that video, I taught you how to memorize an entire chessboard, but now we're just dealing with this one little guy, the knight. A famous little math problem called the Knight's Tour. Now, I was introduced to this about a year ago. I was on a show called Brain Games.
We're all different types of people.
And I met this mentalist who was telling me about this cool demonstration he did. He could take the knight and from any point on the board, touch every other point on the board as well. All 64 points without repeating themselves and without having to jump illegally. I haven't found any good videos on how to do that yet on YouTube, so I figured I might as well give you guys one. On top of that, I'll give you guys a few variations depending on how deep you want to go. So the first version will be the easiest, and that will be only starting from one of the four corners of the board. Now the second way, a little harder, is if you ask a viewer or someone you want to impress, choose any square to start on. So you can put the knight anywhere and complete the knight's tour from that starting square. Then I'll show you another one where you can ask them to choose the starting point and the end point and be able to complete the entire knight's tour from start to finish. And then finally, because this is such a mentalist's kind of demonstration, I'll show you how the mentalists do it. I think it's cheating. Well, of course it's cheating.
27, 33, 18. Let's clear up the top. Now 1.
I don't like that way because it's kind of a hack, but there is a bit of memory involved, so I do like that. I think the other ways are cooler because you're actually figuring it out as you go. So you can think about it. It's a nice little puzzle. Anyways, let's get started. So let's first talk about what constitutes a legal move for this piece. And basically it makes an L shape. That's the easiest way I think to remember it. And you can remember that by either from the point of origin going up, down, left, or right in any direction by 1, and then perpendicular to it by 2. And you can also do the flip in any of the directions, left, right, up, or down. You can go 2 pieces and then 1. That sounded really complicated coming out of my mouth, but from the diagram, it should make sense. One thing to note, that whatever square you start on, whatever color it is, black or white, it's gonna end on the opposite color. It has to, otherwise it won't work. For the first 2 variations of how to do this, it's not really gonna matter because nobody's telling us where to end. But for the third one, the more difficult one, you're telling the viewer choose a starting and end point. So all you have to make sure to tell them is that those 2 starting and end points have to be different color squares. And if they don't like that, just tell them that mathematically it is impossible to do otherwise. And in terms of rules, again, you can't touch a square that you've already been to. The problem here is that you're gonna go around and then you're gonna get trapped, right? You're gonna get to a point on the board where, shoot, you can't make it out of there without having to touch a square you've already touched. And that's what we're trying to think about before we make our moves. It's really a nice, elegant solution when you see it. And it feels nice when you solve it without having messed up. All right, so let's do the first variation. And now the easiest part about this one is you're just starting in one of the 4 corners. Doesn't matter which one, but you gotta stick to these 2 rules. One is that you gotta stay to the outermost square that you possibly can. The second one is you gotta keep moving in a counterclockwise or clockwise direction. It doesn't matter which direction you choose, but you gotta stick with it throughout the game until you're done. So I think the best way to show you this is just on an app that I use to practice. All right, so I typically will start from the top left. I think that's honestly the easiest place to start to understand this, and then we'll go counterclockwise around the board. But again, you have to start in one of the corners. That's the easy way here. Not much to think about there. Okay, so there's my first piece. Now next, what do? Well, we keep those 2 rules in mind. I gotta stay on the outermost of the board that I possibly can, and I gotta keep moving around the board in this counterclockwise fashion. So if I look at the possible moves here, it's either down 2 over 1 or over 2 down 1, but that one would go clockwise. I'm trying to go counterclockwise. Now again, you can do it the other way, but we're sticking to counterclockwise and that's the way we're doing it. So down 2 over 1, that's my second move. And we continue. I gotta stay on the outside of the board, so that would be staying and hugging against the rim here, still going down counterclockwise. Here, now we go down there, then here. And now we're in the corner here, we gotta turn back up, right? So up here, and here, here, and now we're coming around, right? This all makes sense. And now here, I'm still coming around, but I wanna stay at the outermost edge, so that would take me there, right? And then that would alternate right there, there, there. Okay, we're coming around. This first few rounds is actually pretty easy, and it looks very nice and symmetrical, the pieces I've been to. When you start running out of pieces in the outside, it gets tricky on the middle, but you can make it through. Okay. This is kind of weird because I can't stay as outermost as I'd like to because the piece has already been touched. So to do that, my only possible move is really there, right? That's the closest to the edge that hasn't been taken. And now I can go back to the very edge there and can kind of continue very close to the edge. If you don't follow me, you can always slow this down. In that corner now. And then we're up here, up there. And now we're gonna have to kind of fill in this center board, watch. So this is the next move I can make. Now I have to continue kind of curving around, but I'm kind of filling in this center part here. Then that would go here, and then it's kind of getting weird here. But if I keep those two rules in mind, okay, it's gotta go still that way, but as outermost as I can, which would be this piece, right? And then that would take me here. And it's tempting to want to go down here, but that would bring me out of that kind of curve. I got to keep going up and turning. So that brings me here, and then outermost would be here. And now you can see it's going to start connecting with the outer pieces here, right? We're back in something that almost looks really easy to follow. And you know you've done it right when you see this little Y in the middle there. You'll see why in a second. Okay, I'm just filling in those pieces. Boom, 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 boom. Right? Right. Try it out. There's a few apps, like I said, you can download to try this. I'll also show you a link down below where you can try it online and just try to see if you can fill in the whole square without messing up. All right, so now the next variation, a little more complicated, and this is where the viewer or someone you're wanting to show this to chooses the starting position for you. Now, obviously, one of the starting points could be one of the corners, but it's more likely that they'll choose something complicated in the middle. So to do this, you just need to be familiar with 4 quadrants of the chessboard. I'll go over that in a second. And then these 4, what I'll call systems. Once you have those, it's honestly like child's play, no joke. So let's start with the quadrants, okay? Obviously a chessboard is 8 by 8, 64 squares. So if you divide that in little quadrants, right, you're gonna have these little 4 by 4s, 4 of them, right? We can consider the top left one, quadrant 1, top right, quadrant 2, bottom left, 3, and bottom right, 4. All right, so let's start with the first system, and that will be what I call a left-handed diamond, okay? What does that look like? So let's start with just one of the quadrants, okay? That's gonna be one piece in the corner of the quadrant, and then 2 pieces there. And you'll notice that if I'm looking at the board, this looks like a diamond, right? And it's left-handed, meaning it starts at the top left. It's kind of pointed towards the left. Now, this is just one quadrant, so you can imagine these same diamonds mapped across each of the different quadrants, right? So I'm gonna have one, I'll do them in different colors so it's clear. I'm gonna have one in quadrant 2, the exact same structure, right? I'm gonna have one in quadrant 3, the exact same structure, right? And then finally, I'll have one in that 4th quadrant. Now, naturally, if there's a left-handed diamond, there's gonna be a right-handed diamond. That's the system number 2. So all that is really the same as this, but kind of looking to the right. So if you can imagine the same kind of formation, just everything is flipped here. Okay. Now, you don't have to be able to put these on a board like I'm doing. This is just to visualize, to understand and get a feel for what structure these kind of squares can have in terms of knights moving around them. Okay, so 2 of the systems are diamonds. The other 2 are going to be squares. Okay, you have a left-handed square and a right-handed square. Now, the left-handed square looks like this. See that? It's a square, you can imagine it's kind of tilted square, but it's a square nevertheless. Okay, that's the left-handed square because it's kind of pointed to the upper left. And then of course there's gonna be the right-handed square, which is basically, if I can imagine it, flipped that way. So like this, see that? I literally just kind of did a rotation there. There we go. That may seem a bit confusing. It might be helpful to take your own chessboard out and make sure you visualize those as best as you can. The key to being able to do this is understanding these different structures. If you can see them in your mind without the colors I've overlaid here, then you can do this easy. All right, now how does it work? What do we do with these systems and these quadrants, right? Just like the previous variation, there were some rules. And if you just stick to those rules, you'll find the solution. All right, step number 1, rule number 1 is to, wherever your piece falls, let's say it starts there, okay? The first thing you wanna do is note which quadrant and which system it is in. In this example, it's in the second quadrant in a right-handed square position. Now, it doesn't matter whether it starts on any of these pieces in the square. All I need to know to start is that it is in that right-handed square. Step number 2, or rule number 2, you want to complete all 4 pieces within that system, within that quadrant, before you move on to another quadrant. So obviously each of those systems in each quadrant has 4 squares you got to touch. So I have to make sure I hit one, well, I start there. I got to touch this one, and this one before I can move on. Now, the next rule is important. So as you complete touching these other pieces within that quadrant, you need to make sure that the final one will allow you to jump into another quadrant, into the same system, right? So we're still doing the square, right-hand square. So when I complete this, whether I want to go to the black quadrant here or the blue, doesn't matter. I just need to make sure that I touch all of the greens before I move on to the blue or the black. And I want to make sure that I land on a right-hand square in that next quadrant. Otherwise, it's all messed up, okay? So an example here could be, let's see, I want to go maybe here, right? Then here, and then here, right? Which will allow me to traverse over here, which is in the next quadrant, right? And then here, and then here. Now, I need to make sure to get this next one, right? I can't go back to this quadrant, so the next logical move will take me to this third quadrant here, right? And then I continue here, here, here. I want to connect into this one, here, here, here. And now I've touched all 4 quadrants in this right-hand square system. Now you have to be careful because when you're done with your last square of all 4 quadrants of that system, right-hand square, you have to make sure that your move, your next move, will take you into another quadrant and another opposite system. You can't go square to square, so I can't go from right-hand square to left-hand square. It's got to go square to diamond. Okay, left or right-hand diamond doesn't matter. So for this one, there's actually a few options. I could, connect into this left-hand diamond, the bottom one of quadrant 1. I could, let's see, I could go back, and that's part of the quadrant 3 right-hand diamond. You have a few options. And then you just repeat this procedure. You go from square to then diamond, then to square, and then to diamond. And by the end, honestly, the last tour, you'll see the path is basically there for you because you've touched all the other pieces. It's really easy to figure out where to go at that point, and you're just following the empty spaces. So stick to those rules and you'll be able to figure out the knight's tour starting at any square. Let's do an example. Let's start with, I don't know, I like the left-hand diamond, but maybe we can start in quadrant 3. And we have to complete all the squares in that system, in that quadrant. So I'm gonna go here, here, and here. And now we've completed all 4 pieces. Next step is to then go into another quadrant, the same system, which I'm gonna move to quadrant 4 here, hit that top corner, get all 4 pieces. And now I'm gonna maybe move up to the second quadrant, hit all those from the left diamond, and then finish up the last quadrant. There, so we've done all the left-hand diamonds in all quadrants. Next step is to change to an opposite system. So we need to go to a square system in a different quadrant. So I'm gonna jump into the 3rd quadrant here, the right-hand square. Finish all those squares. Now go into the 4th quadrant, down here. Now into the 2nd quadrant, get those 4. And then the final quadrant, here, there, and there. Now I need to go back to a diamond. I already did the left-hand diamond, so now I'm gonna do the right-hand diamond. And I'm gonna go back to the 2nd quadrant, get the diamond pieces there, then go to, let's see, quadrant 4, get those pieces there, then go into quadrant 3. I need to be careful I go in the right order so that I don't get stuck. And then finally, the top left quadrant to get that final diamond. Let's see, this piece, the corner, and finish up there. And now it's almost clear, it's just the left-hand square, which I can just easily follow, starting with the 2nd quadrant. Just gotta make a little bit of sound judgment on how I traverse these. Quadrant 3, and then finally quadrant 1. That's it. So this last variation is the most difficult, and it's where the viewer chooses a starting square and a finishing square. Now, it is a little more challenging. You have to think a little bit more, but really, if you can do the second variation and you understand systems and the quadrants and you've practiced it enough, then this variation shouldn't be that much harder. You just have to really be aware of where you're starting, where you're finishing, what quadrant you start in, what system you start in, and which ones you end in as well. I'm not gonna go fully into this because I could probably make a whole other video entirely on this variation, but I encourage you guys to try it. And I really think that those who want to master this have to master the first 2 variations first. And then with enough practice, I think that this variation actually will be pretty intuitive if you really understand how to do the previous ones. All right, now finally, the way mentalists do it, or at least that I understand. Any mentalists out there, please correct me if I'm wrong, but this was pulled from an old book by Corinda, who's a famous mentalist, and it's basically this. So if you imagine the board is numbered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all the way down to 64, okay? The way it goes in some kind of mentalist presentation is they'll draw a grid, or they'll have a grid, chessboard grid on some kind of board or on paper, whatever, and they'll have it numbered 1 to 64. And without looking, you know, the audience member can choose where to start, position 54. And from there, without looking at the board, they can rattle off all the positions without even looking. All they've done is memorized a sequence of numbers. And no matter where they start, whether they start at position 54 or 1 or 7 or 64, they can go to that position in their sequence and just continue on and wrap around so that they touch all of the numbers in that order. If you want to know the one specifically from Corinda's book, here it is. So just memorize that sequence, start at the number that the audience member chooses, and then when you get to the end, continue around until you've said all 64 numbers. Voila, you've now fooled the audience. That one's kind of not very satisfying, is it? Yeah. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. I know this was a bit of a kind of tricky technical one, but I think it's a really cool math problem and really fun to actually solve yourself and of course to show off to others. So try it, practice it, and let me know how you do in the comments below. Thank you guys, I'm out. I'll see you in the next video. Love you all. Please like, share, subscribe, all that jazz. I'm out.